The final Guardians of the Galaxy movie has been anticipated for a while now, and we know it's James Gunn's last foray into the MCU as he now is diving into the DC world. So, how is this last volume in the Misfit Space Savior story? Still reeling from the loss of Gamora, Peter Quill rallies his team to defend the universe and one of their own, a mission that could mean the end of the Guardians if not successful. This story is heavily focused on Rocket and his origins, all while addressing several story arcs related to family. And really, that's what Guardians has been about for so much of the trilogy of the movies. I mean, Peter's mom dying when he was a kid, then being raised by Ravagers, then losing Yondu, who was like his dad, also having to battle his real dad, Ego. And there are arcs for Nebula and Gamora and their highly dysfunctional family relationship with Thanos. Drax has been mourning the loss of his family. And Groot, well, I mean, he's a teenager now, or maybe early adult, and he's having to regrow up with the Guardians from a sapling. So all of this is to say, really, that the theme of family, it's not a new one. And I like that it continues in Volume 3. So the team is working to save one of their own, all while having to deal with the antagonist who likes to tweak with species. He's called the High Evolutionary, and he's the main baddie for this story. But before I get into him, this movie starts off fairly rough. It's bouncing visually just all over the place within nowhere, feeling way more like the Christmas special than an actual movie. And the transitions, they're also clunky, where all of a sudden the scene cuts to an outside force coming to attack nowhere, and then all heck breaks loose. I mean, the action, it's very frenetic and also jumbled in the visuals. Sometimes we can see the action clearly, other times it's all just a huge blur, which then kept breaking me out of the story, even though we'd only barely entered into it. And there are probably at least 30 minutes that go by before the movie begins to find its groove, and the pieces, they start to fall into place. I mean, even the characters feel out of sync with each other. Like, they're all having a very bad day, and the scenes are kept just despite the chemistry being off. Once the story begins to gel, then the real emotion of it all kicks into gear. There are some emotional moments that are established earlier, but because everything is happening at a breakneck speed, the emotion, it doesn't have time to resonate and become as impactful as it does later on in the story. And this is also hindered by forced jokes and unfunny dialogue that makes so much of it all fall flat. And since I'm already kind of focusing on the negatives of the movie, well, not really kind of, but I am. The High Evolutionary, he's the main antagonist. But outside of his obsessive desire for perfection and a god complex, he's kind of ill-defined. He does actions that make him very unlikable and despicable, so it is easy to root against him. But he doesn't feel like he should be the main villain. He's also got this suit that gives him incredible power, and it's purplish, making me think that it was imbued with the Power Stone. But it's literally never addressed or explained on how he got this phenomenal cosmic power. The acting by Chukwudi Iwuji is fine, and he creates a formidable presence, but in the scheme of things, he doesn't feel like that big of a deal. And then there's Adam Warlock. Now, he was teased in the post-credits of Volume 2. Will Poulter, he got ripped for the role, and there was a ton of buzz around the character. Well, he comes on with a bang, and we can see that he's immensely powerful. But he feels way more like a punchline to the story than anything serious. He's also just a minor addition to the narrative, and really only used as a henchman. Now, I'm not sure what I was expecting to see from him, but I didn't think that he'd be such a minor player. And he has a couple of moments that he gets to shine, but the way the character is written is more like the aw shucks country simpleton who's out of his depth on anything that doesn't involve smashing somebody with his fists. The movie's also a long one at 2.5 hours, and I felt the time. I think a lot of that has to do with this disjointed and clunky storytelling at the beginning, but then portions of the action just go on, becoming more of a drag than anything else. For example, the team goes to this organic space thing, and the sequences there take way longer than they should in an effort to just insert more comedy or slapstick. But what we get are extended scenes of characters yelling at each other and force-feeding jokes that are just cringy. And probably the only good thing that we get from this scene is 2 cameos. And their names, they're shown in the opening credits, so it's not even a spoiler. But we see Sylvester Stallone and Nathan Fillion. But we also get one not-so-good cameo with James Gunn's wife, Jennifer Holland. Now, her addition, it was pretty bad. And all I could see was her character from Peacemaker. Now, there are some bright spots within the movie also. I mean, first, as to be expected, the soundtrack, it's phenomenal. Playing hits that span decades and sometimes using them as background ambiance, but other times as complementary story devices. There are also several moments woven throughout, and a huge portion of them towards the end, where we have tug at your heart story arcs that are touching and emotionally impacting. A ton of them surround Rocket's story and his background. And it also doesn't hurt anything that we get to see a ton of cute, fluffy baby animals. And this is also where a lot of the themes of family are carried out. I mean, not just with Rocket, but in large and small ways with the other characters too. So when the movie is focusing on what it's done so well in the past with the topic of family, the story beats, they're emotional and impactful, shining with real heart. And I thought the storyline with Rocket and his background was spectacular, and it carried the entire film. But the movie falters when it tries to be more comedic than the dialogue permits, when some of the action gets blurred and jumbled, and when it focuses on an antagonist who isn't well defined or really even much of a villain, save for the horrible things that he does to innocents. The length is also evident, reducing the excitement and the energy that could accompany this if it were more concise and efficiently told. It's not a bad movie, and I hope you do get some enjoyment from it, but it could be so much more. There's a mid-credit scene as well as a post-credit scene that you are going to want to stick around for, even though the first one, it may not be that incredibly important. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and then a ton of violence. I give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 3 out of 5 couches. So who's your favorite character in the Guardians franchise? Now, for me, I really like Rocket, but Nebula, she's been growing on me. Let me know yours, though, in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.